I'm Mike. I'm with the Minnesota State Bar Association, and by way of background, the Bar Association is a voluntary bar association. Are people familiar with the distinction between unified and the voluntary bar association? Essentially, as a voluntary bar association, we don't have regulatory oversight of the profession. Folks just join us because we offer services and benefits to the professional association. So you're not required to join the Bar Association to practice in Minnesota. And so part of my job is to make sure that we're constantly engaging our members, that they're finding valuable services. And so I'm going to show some of the forms that we've built using Community Lawyer. But I wanted to show this page first because it really, for us, I think represents the end product using Community Lawyer. We've got a library of forms that are mostly developed by our members for other members. So it's a collection of operating agreements and litigation forms and things like that that are developed by our members. Now, it's not a publishing platform necessarily. It's not your Westlaw library of legal forms, for example. We just added a cabin trust, for example. I'm working on a pet trust because a couple of our members have asked for one. This is what the landing page in the practice law library looks like. It's just a landing page with some description about what the document is about, and then you can download usually the Word document, but it could be a checklist, it could be any kind of file. You just access it from the members-only community. And I've added in here, you can see that the description phase a couple of additional links. When I discovered Community Lawyer, I thought, oh, this is cool because now I can build something that I've always wanted to build. I had about 10 years at Thomson Reuters as a Westlaw reference attorney. And if you're on Westlaw and you're viewing a form, you'll see there are a couple of links in the upper right-hand corner. One will say you can easy edit, which just takes the form out of the secondary source and puts it into Word for you. Or you can actually click build and assemble the document using their assembly tool. So it's kind of a nice, and I've always wanted to build that for the practice law library. When I found the videos on how to use Community Lawyer, I thought that's cool. I can build that. That's something that's easy for me to do. But as I say this, I don't think about this any longer really as a publishing platform. The forms that come into practice law right now kind of come in one of two ways. The most popular way is through committee, which means that a group of attorneys will spend, I was explaining this at dinner last night, will spend days discussing the placement of a comma in a doc. So it's not a fluid process at all. And at the very end, you get substantively a very impressive document, but often it's not usable because it'll be published to an 8.5 by 14 piece of PDF, and nobody can use the document when it's sized for the way folks actually use it. The PDF form's got this teeny type on it, so it's kind of gross. So substantively, it's impressive, but as far as usability is concerned, not very impressive at all. And I think most of our members are very concerned about their professional reputation, and so they don't want to just volunteer information to us either. I have a pet trust in process. On these communities, you can see there are lots of posts from individuals. So this is just this is our library, but this is an online forum, like any other online community. Somebody will ask, do you have a document? Do you have a sample summary judgment motion, for example? Somebody will say yes, and then they'll go offline and share that document offline and share it publicly, which is extremely frustrating. But I understand why. They don't want to have their professional reputation injured in any way by publicly sharing a document that worked for them in this one instance, but may not be applicable to everyone at the same time. But frustrating from a community building standpoint because somebody is listening to that conversation but can't find the answer because they've replied offline. And so that is something that I'm actually trying to use Community Lawyer to resolve. So this pet trust that I'm after, I've got somebody who's designing that for us and keeps telling me, well, I've got an expert, a real expert working on this, so I'll get back to you next week. It has been months that I've been waiting for this document. I don't care, I just do not care, right? Because there's that one paragraph that is useful. And if you think about how these community libraries are used, it's you find the form you need and there's that one paragraph of text that you're going to use for your particular bill. You're not going to assemble the document. You're not going to use that entire form by itself. So I'm trying to build our community library so it looks more like this, where you have access to multiple items. You've got the original text as a Word document. You can assemble it using Community Lawyer, or you can access the app build itself. We were even talking about maybe putting a payment block on the assemblable form, nominal fee, $10. I don't know what, if you want to build the document without any ability to edit, but making this ability to modify the app itself free and incentivizing people to use that instead of the Word document or the assemblable document there. So that's the strategy. We want to move this really from a publishing type of platform to a developer builder type of platform. We want to grease the skids for community engagement. We don't want those conversations taking place offline. We want them engaging on this network here. We've got a very diverse, technologically speaking, diverse membership, as I'm sure you're aware. If you want to have a good time, come to one of our blockchain CLEs where some of these trying to explain what do they call Merkle trees to someone who's got probably the secretary turning on their power in the morning. So it's challenging. It's challenging, and I never expect. We've got 15,000 members. I don't expect to ever see 15,000 members building documents. If I have 10, that's awesome. If I have 10 of our members who are offering these documents regularly for us, that's typically how these communities work. Anywhere where you have somewhere between just under 1% who are active members of the community, and the rest of the community is really passively looking on, but still finds great value because of that 1% of active leaders within the online forum. So this is our end product here. We'll show you a couple of things that we are building. And this is sort of on the spectrum of super simple to super complicated. This Courtroom Preferences is one of our most popular publications. Every year, the civil litigation section interviews all of the judges in Minnesota and asks them what their preferences are for operating within their courtroom. So outside of just the rules of the rules of civil procedure, I'll run this one quickly. The recent addition of the table feature in Community Lawyer made this possible. And as I say, we converted this from a publication. This is one of our ebooks, and so I just dropped the intro into the menu here. Super simple, as they say, build. Just 3 question blocks, 2 question blocks, actually 1 question block, an info block, question block, and then the deliverable. Is this going to open for me? No. I forget how many questions are. Most of the work on this form was assigning all of these variables to the table. But great information here. They're asking things like how long do you allow for arguing expositive motions, things like that. And it's just a simple form. So rather than having to download an entire 300-page ebook, you just pick your particular judge and deliver the document. So sort of a report generator type of tool. This one I have broken and built and broken and rebuilt many times. This is for a member, and she was explaining to me a problem that she had. This is, interestingly, Jess Birkin has an interesting business model. She does subscription-based legal services. So rather than just charging by the hour, she charges by the month for a block of certain type of legal services. She's very tech savvy. She's a hot docs user, but didn't have the time to generate the form that she needed for this particular process. We don't necessarily need to run through each of this one extremely frustrating for me to build this one for a couple of reasons. One, I'm just not familiar with the substantive legal process. I'm not close to this kind of transaction. And I'm one of those attorneys who is now using the term variable. I'm saying I'm one of those guys. Also not a digital native. And so frustration for me is double. I don't have the tech expertise. I don't have the substantive legal expertise. The way I built this was by just interpreting the 5 sample documents that Jess gave me, and I used that to build this. As I say, I broke it many, many times. What Jess did to get this process in place was generate 28 documents. So I asked her, well, how much time are we saving with this process? She said, none at all. It takes her about 2 minutes to do this work right now, but she had to generate those 28 Word documents. But after she's done that, she can do this process in about 2 minutes, which is about how long it takes to complete this form. But she says, I don't charge $300 an hour to be somebody's legal secretary. It's not of value. Even the few minutes that I spend is just not what I want to be doing with my life, and it's not value that I'm adding to my clients. And so what she said she wanted to do was just to send the form, charge $20, payment block, and she's got a Stripe account. So this is something that we were able to completely build for her just as a member benefit. And she can now deliver this form to her clients to complete themselves at a cost of $20. I don't have the payment block installed here. I'm going to Stripe account myself, but it took a long time to build this. I'm not sure, if we're talking about measuring our return on investment, sort of how to calculate that. I think whether it's Hot Docs or Community Lawyer, it's challenging because of those frustrations I was explaining. It's hard to sort of calculate that ROI during the learning process. But as I say, this is one of the more complicated transactions. These are calling on a number of tables also. And this was built specifically for our clients as well. So declarant is something that our clients will be familiar with. This is calling on the, this is not a table. I actually manually typed that in, so I was interested in that. He said that Minnesota's got 87 counties. I had to take them all.
Sorry.
This is the least sexy document on the planet, I think. It's just, in the end, you get a reportable document demonstrating it's the deed transfer. It's original, same path. With the addition of the table feature, actually saved this project. I looked especially great. Everybody said, "Mike asked the table." Here's the big table. There are about 100 rows in the table, about 50 for the state grant agreements, about 50 for the federal grant agreements. And the client, I'm told, recognizes the name of the agreement. And so that's what we use as our key. Just an alpha list selected on me. Mostly I don't really care anything about this except for that the tabling is now available. And then it generates just a place to review the document. This is stuff that's obviously in the table and important to the completion of the final form, so you can kind of make sure that you're generating the right document before you put continue and it generates the form. Form itself, not a complex form, just all the variables that are, the title changes depending on who the donee is, whether it's a state or federal grant agreement. So there are a lot of if-thens in the code. And that's why it took so long. Condensing, we ended up with 4 final blocks in this one versus, I guess, the 28 documents that Jess had to create. But this is a great real-world example of something that one of our members would actually be using the program for. So more complex, but any questions? Arguments? Yeah.
In the section where you allow them to change the application themselves, aren't you worried about them going in and trashing it or changing it in some way that messes it up? Or
well,
you go back and retrieve it? Or?
It allows them to duplicate the app for their own purposes.
Okay.
Yeah. The other link we could add on here might be our community link. Does that work? I think we could add that in so they have access to the full library of applications that have been developed as well, not just the documents.
How deep do you go to assembly of documents, like names and shares or percentage ownership? Do you go to that like versus majority vote?
Yeah, it's based on the form that was generated by the committee who drafted it. So actually, this one's interesting because I had to limit this one because I built it before looping blocks were available. And so I had to build this with maximum 3, I think I did up to 5. It was kind of a ridiculous, stupid build because I had to add in is there another shareholder you need to add in here? Yes, no. And I shifted the extra block. Well, the looping blocks make that a lot more elegant, so I actually moved it back in here. I would never want to share this one with anybody at this point, but it's based off the content that's been provided for us. But it can be, because Jess Perkins' model demonstrates, it can be quite complex. I did break a couple of things with Jess as I tried to reduce it to one final block, for example, but learned that the variables inside, I'm not even sure how to describe it, but the variables inside, it's like with the email, you can't do the variables in the email, doesn't fall from the, is that correct?
I don't know, let's talk offline.
Yeah. The more you bury the variables into various conditions, the less likely they are to pull through. I found, again, platform, but I had to do 4 final blocks instead of 1 in order to fix. But still, I found it to be quite complex builds. All right. So,
Thank you.